This lecture is part 2 of the chapter 3, which is Art Nouveau, a new style for a new culture. At the end of the previous lecture, we mentioned that Scotland artists were also doing a lot in the Art Nouveau movement. And this was all came out of the Glasgow School of Art. Glasgow was a 19th century boom town, and it really went through urban growth during the Industrial Revolution. There was this economic sort of chasm between the rich and the poor who worked in the factories, and the decorative art that the School of Art produced provided an alternative world from which the problems of the industrial age could be technically forgotten or ignored. There was four main artists that came out of this Art Nouveau movement. Margaret MacDonald, Frances MacDonald, who were sisters, Herbert McNair, and Charles Rennie Mackintosh. Their partnership was called The Four, and it was two sisters and their soon-to-be husbands. They were inspired by Japanese as well as by the decadent artists Aubrey Beardsley and Oscar Wilde in England. None of these four artists worked professionally as graphic designers. However, the limited works they did produce proved to be very influential and secured Scotland a niche in the history of the Art Nouveau movement. The MacDonald sisters called themselves the Immortals, and they were influenced by Japanese and the art of Aubrey Beardsley and Oscar Wilde. They were also influenced by their history and Celtic visual style and symbolism. They wanted to establish their art as part of a national tradition. This is a piece called A Pond, and it was published in the student journal called The Magazine. You can see the sinuous, organically shaped figures with a very symmetrical organization. This was the beginning of a bold new graphic style. The green and indigo palette were colors that were associated with Scottish identity. This is the first poster by the MacDonald sisters in collaboration with Herbert McNair. You can see that it's got the same stylistic devices as in the previous poster, A Pond. It's got the vertical format, a symmetrical design, including hand-drawn lettering. The composition is also made up of a series of boxes that encase the more organic forms. So you can see the box at the bottom, the box in the middle, and the box at the top. Charles Rennie Mackintosh was the last addition to the Four's collaborative group. He was actually trained as an architect. His poster features the same mix of curvilinear and rectilinear elements visible in earlier posters. It also includes the Scottish palette of indigo and green. The use of the text box as a pedestal for the centralized image of the figure includes the hand-drawn text. A parallel to the Four's graphic work is found in Mackintosh's interior designs for the Glasgow School of Art itself. The interior spaces featured much of the complex mix of symmetry and asymmetry that characterized the work of the Four. This brings us to the Vienna Secession. In Vienna, graphic design was an important part of the secession movement, which was led by Gustav Klimt. The artists group called the Vienna Secession was formed in April 1897, and what they wanted to do was embrace the newer styles and artistic theories that were spreading quickly across Europe. Their first goal was to create an organization with an exhibition venue through which more progressive artists could present their work to the public. Gustav Klimt was elected president of the secession, and he produced a poster for the show that set the tone for much of the art that would follow. He adopted the vertical format, asymmetrical design, and empty space that had been a key part of Aubrey Beardsley's designs in England. French symbolist ideas influenced the secession, which included mystery, ambiguity, and an emotional response. In Vienna, classical myths were used to explain modern situations. So you have Athena, the Minotaur, Theseus, who are all struggling to free themselves from conservative tradition. Josef Maria Ulbricht was chosen to design the building, which was to be located on the Ringstrasse, which is Vienna's most fashionable avenue, and this was called the Secession Building. The secession artists wanted to make a public statement by locating their exhibition hall and headquarters in the thick of what they considered a mass of tired-looking neoclassicism. Ulbricht's design was recognized as one of the most notable examples of Viennese Art Nouveau architecture. The blank spaces in the facade, right here and right here, resonate with the comparable void used in Klimt's poster for the first Secession exhibition. Secession artists made an effort to unify different media with a holistic aesthetic. And I'm totally going to butcher this word, but it's called Gesamtkunstwerk, which means total work of art. Thankfully, I won't have to pronounce this word in front of all of you, but this is really important to know and to remember. And even if you don't, can't pronounce it yourself or even spell it for that matter, just knowing that this means a total work of art is important for this movement. For the visual artists, this was a theoretical goal, but the secession artists really tried to implement the idea of a unification of the arts in as many ways as possible. The carving above the main entrance of the building reads, "To each age, its art, to art, its freedom." And the most innovative part of Ulbricht's design is the exhibition space featured movable panels, creating an open plan. So that was inside this building. The secession journal, called Versacrum, was established in 1898. And this was a location of a great deal of experimental graphic work. The first issue had an essay that declared that Versacrum aims to show other countries for the first time that Austria is an independent artistic entity. They sought to integrate typography, ornament, and image into a unified artwork on the page, which is that same concept of the Gesamtkunstwerk. And again, sorry for my pronunciation. This is a cover of Versacrum by Koloman Moser. He drew an allegorical female figure emerging from tendrils that create abstract forms. The flattened plane suggests the influence of Japanese aesthetics, which had a special fascination for the secession artists. The unusual square format of the magazine gained it a lot of attention. By 1902, many of the secession artists shifted to a decorative design built on orthogonal structures. More straightforward subject matter, geometric pattern became a more important visual element. So you can see the circles, the rectangles, the linear elements. In this poster, Moser used a scheme of 3 figures arranged symmetrically in a vertical format. This was also reminiscent of the Glasgow 4. The geometric pattern and extreme simplification of the figures are very different from the decorative sensuality of the French Art Nouveau. So we're definitely getting more geometric. This is a poster by Alfred Roller. His poster bridges the curvilinear style of the early secession with the post-1900 concern with geometry. Block of text at the bottom features a dense, bold, decorative type in which the letters fit into every inch of the box that holds them. You'll see this later on in future chapters when we get into the psychedelic movement. The Wiener Werkstatt was created by Josef Hoffmann, who is a Viennese architect, designer, and a member of the secession, and Koloman Moser, and this is the new organization that they developed. The name translates as the Viennese Workshops. Artists were influenced by the principles of the arts and craft movement as well as the concept of Gesamtkunstwerk, which is, again, means total work of art. What their focus was on promoting high standards of the manufacture of Austrian crafts. So they were really influenced by the arts and crafts movement, which was done by William Morris. And the term crafts denotes the decorative arts associated with architecture, such as furniture and textile design, metalwork, bookbinding, graphic design, and the creation of industrial products. The artists associated with the Wiener Werkstatt rejected the irregular organic style of the early secession and focused their efforts on geometric clarity. These logotypes were produced to be used on all goods that were created. The rose logo features the flower depicted in a severe rectilinear design. The twin W's displays the superimposed letters in a perfectly square shape. An important part of the Werkstatt ideology was that the designers would be paid royalties from their work. In this poster, the twin W's logo were used with the words Wiener Werkstatt, and this was created by Joseph Hoffman. And you can see also how they're using the geometric forms. They even designed flatware, furniture, different things like that. And on the back of this flatware, it was monogrammed with the twin W's logotype. Hoffman and Moser also designed the interior of a fashion house owned by Emil Floge, a close friend of Gustav Klimt. These chairs have a simplistic design with strong vertical emphasis, which is complemented by the cubic table. The ideal of making beautiful mass-produced goods for the world was fine in theory, but again, just like in the arts and crafts movement, the output at the Werkstatt could only be afforded by the wealthy. Another trend in graphic design that grew out of the Viennese succession was Expressionism. It's neither a defined movement like the Werkstatt nor an individual style. It was more of like a mindset. So the artist doesn't show what the world looks like, but tries to show what it feels like. Expressionist artists used distortions of form, color, and space to increase the emotional impact on the viewer. They really sought to represent the storm and stress of a tortured soul or trying situation. Oskar Kokoschka was the foremost expressionist artist that was associated with the Werkstatt. He was a student of Gustav Klimt, and his artwork had an expressive intensity. He shaved his own head, which at the time was sort of not done, and he sort of had this striking appearance. This is a self-portrait which has exaggerated features to emphasize a sort of misshapen ugliness to convey the emotional intensity. In this poster, he's presenting himself in the guise of Jesus, poking the wound at his chest. Another expressionist artist associated with the Werkstatt was Egon Schiele. He was also a student of Gustav Klimt. His torturous emotional life is well represented in the art. The poster was issued in support of a music festival held as a celebration of Austrian composers, which is very interesting because it's sort of this, you have this juxtaposition of, artist who's going through emotional trauma, yet trying to advertise a musical celebration, which I think is very ironic. This is his poster for his solo exhibition in Vienna, and it's really a powerful vision of emotional pain. In Germany, the Art Nouveau movement was called Jugendstyle, which represented another example of artists' desire to escape from the eclectic historicist styles that dominated the 19th century. In 1894, a series of new magazines were created to help kickstart a group of young German designers to pursue the styles that were sweeping across Europe. Jugendstyle means youth style and was derived from the name of one of the new German art magazines founded by progressive young artists. The first periodical to promote Art Nouveau in Germany was called Pan, and it was associated with creativity, music, and poetry, as well as Dionysian sexuality and visionary nightmares, which were the favorite themes of Art Nouveau. It ran for 5 years. This is a poster from Joseph Sattler called Pan, and it was advertising the journal. You can see the internal floral stamens of the water lily spell out the word Pan using hand-drawn text, an image which really sort of harkens back to the fashion of many of the French posters during this time. The image is also full of Japanese influences, especially the flat space and complementary colors. This is a magazine cover by Fritz Erler, and the use of the term Jugendstyle as a German synonym for Art Nouveau began with this magazine. The publisher, George Hirth, was committed to modern graphics from the very start. He hired over 70 illustrators to produce a wide variety of Art Nouveau graphics. and he really wanted each cover to reference the theme of youth. So if you look at this masthead, the masthead of the Jugend magazine represents an important compromise between Jugendstyle aesthetics and the traditional German script blackletter. Erler's masthead is a typical German Art Nouveau in that it combines elements of blackletter with curvilinear decorative elements of modern hand-drawn lettering. This is a good example of how young artists sought to merge national tradition and Jugendstyle aesthetics to typography. This is another example of Jugendstyle aesthetics and typography. This is from Otto Eckmann, and he really focused his work on decorative graphics. He produced a large number of illustrations and decorative borders and headings for journals including Pan and Jugend. In 1900, he created Eckmann, which is an elegant typeface styled after both blackletter and Art Nouveau traditions. So hopefully you can kind of see the influence of both in his type design. Henry van de Velde was one of the most successful Jugendstyle designers in Germany in the 1890s, and he was Belgian. He focused on the decorative arts after a short time spent as a fine artist. He really embraced the concept of a new art that could represent a synthesis between European and Asian aesthetics. He was soon receiving commissions for a variety of design projects from patrons in Munich and Berlin. This candelabrum is an example of this whiplash curve, which was a fundamental design principle in his works. The arms of the candelabrum exude the dynamic energy of a whip about to strike. Line is a force, he was said when asked to explain his aesthetic. This is really one of the only mass-produced posters that he created during his career, and it was for the Tropon Food Company. Their signature product is powdered egg whites, and if you kind of look closely, you can see these sort of egg-shaped forms in this egg white kind of coming out of those shapes. The plant forms of Art Nouveau represent the cracked shells of eggs, and the poster comes close to pure graphic abstraction. If you didn't know this, you might not have seen that this was a poster for eggs. His design maintains the powerful energy of the whiplash, just like it did in the candelabrum. This is one of his most esteemed graphic works. He attempted to harmonize every aspect of the book, including its ink, illustrations, and typography. You can see here influence from William Morris's Kelmscott Press during the arts and craft movement. Peter Behrens is another very famous artist, graphic designer, and architect that came from Germany. He established an art colony in 1899 at Darmstadt School and sought to promote high standards for crafts made in the region. The school was led by Joseph Ulbricht, the Vienna Secession architect, and Peter Behrens had an interest in fine and applied arts and also co-founded an arts and crafts group in Munich. He produced a poster for the Darmstadt colony's first exhibition. This is his poster. In the essence of the poster is a balance of Art Nouveau flourishes, and also you can see the simplified Scottish style created by the Glasgow Four. In 1906, he was asked by Emil Rathenau, a founder of the electrical utility industrial producer called AEG, to create a unified design style that would compass all of AEG's buildings, facilities, and graphic materials. He wanted his company to be the leader in marketing and technology. So one of Peter Behrens' first tasks was to design a new building to house the production of electrical generation equipment in Berlin. And this is called the Turbine Factory, or the Turbine Building. It was constructed of concrete, steel, and glass. He followed the Art Nouveau credo that all beauty must exist in the form and not come from applied decorative elements. The logo he designed for AEG is visible on the flat plane at one end of the building, so you can kind of, in this fuzzy picture, see it right here. This is called the honeycomb logotype. This simple logo speaks to the seriousness of purpose and power that an electrical company wants to project. The lettering is in the logo from a typeface that Barron's created for AEG called Barron's Antiqua. He also became one of the first industrial designers, a profession that had been publicly praised without many practical results since the onset of Morris's arts and craft movement in the 1860s. So this is the electric tea kettle he designed, and you can still see this idea of the honeycomb. I think this is an orthogonal shape. It's got 8 sides. He also did graphic design, so he designed a poster advertising AEG's newest product, which was a technologically advanced lamp. He created a unified aesthetic for every aspect of the company's visual environment. He really was the leader and one of the first designers to create the idea of corporate identity, which is a concept which had come to dominate the design professions after 1945. So Peter Barron's really is considered the father of corporate identity. He also made an important contribution to German typography. Barron's Schrift, this typeface shown here, is a composite of black letter script modified by Roman's type clarity. So even though it has that black letter look and feel, it's highly legible. He designed a type that balanced German national aspirations with broader appeal, and it was adopted by the government for use in the 1904 World's Fair held in the United States. He designed 3 typefaces in all: Barron's Antiqua, Barron's Medieval, and Barron's Schrift. By 1910, the Art Nouveau movement was in a decline. Its demise was brought about by social changes that happened during the First World War. It had become a widespread style only in the area of graphic arts, which mainly encompassed printed work. This was because many of the best works in other media, while intended for mass production, were too expensive to produce.